Welcome back to Vuln Vibes, everyone. You know why you're here. We're diving deep into another critical vulnerability today. And this time, it's hitting several Ivanti products.
Right, we're talking about a 0-day. And not just any 0-day one that's being actively exploited to deliver brand new malware. We'll break it all down. But I think it's safe to say that anyone responsible for Ivanti products or, frankly, network security in general needs to be paying very close attention to this one.
No kidding. We're talking CVE 2025-22457 here. And for our listeners who live and breathe this stuff, it's a stack-based buffer overflow. Ivanti themselves have confirmed it's being exploited in the wild. So yeah, not a drill.
Not at all. And the impact is significant. We're talking about Ivanti Connect Secure VPN appliances versions 22.7 R2.5 and earlier are vulnerable. But it doesn't stop there. The end-of-life Pulse Connect Secure 9.1x is also affected.
Oh, and let's not forget Ivanti Policy Secure before version 22.7 R1.4 and ZTA gateways before 22.8 R2.2. That's a pretty broad range of products, and the potential fallout here is huge. This vulnerability scores a 9.0 on the CVSS scale that puts it squarely in critical territory.
Exactly. And to make matters even worse, we're seeing the deployment of entirely new malware families through this exploit. TRAILBLAZE and BRUSHFIRE are the names to know, and they're joining the already established Spawn malware ecosystem.
All right, so we've got a serious vulnerability, active exploitation, new malware, and links to a known threat actor. This is shaping up to be a pretty wild deep dive, but let's break it down systematically for everyone. First things first, CVE 2025-22457. What exactly are we dealing with here?
So like you mentioned, it's a stack-based buffer overflow. Basically, an attacker can exploit this to write data beyond the allocated memory buffer. This can overwrite adjacent memory, potentially even hijacking the application's control flow. It's a classic vulnerability, but still extremely dangerous in the right hands.
And the attack vector here is unauthenticated and remote, right?
That's right. That means an attacker doesn't need any prior access to the system to exploit this vulnerability. They can do it from anywhere with network connectivity. And what makes it even more dangerous is that successful exploitation can lead to remote code execution.
Remote code execution that's basically game over, right?
Pretty much. An attacker with that level of control can essentially do whatever they want on the compromised system. They can steal data, install additional malware, pivot to other systems within the network. The possibilities are, unfortunately, quite extensive.
And this is all happening on devices like VPN appliances, which are typically considered the gateway to an organization's network.
Exactly. They're often seen as trusted entry points, which is why they're such attractive targets for attackers. Compromising a VPN appliance can give them a foothold into the internal network, bypassing many of the perimeter security measures that are in place.
And this isn't just hypothetical. Ivanti has confirmed that CVE 2025-22457 is being actively exploited. It's happening right now.
Yeah, they've stated that it's affecting a limited number of customers so far, but that doesn't mean we should be complacent. The fact that it's being actively exploited means that attackers are already familiar with it and are actively using it in attacks. It's a race against time to patch vulnerable systems before they're targeted.
Okay, let's talk about the malware. What can you tell us about these new families, TRAILBLAZE and BRUSHFIRE, and how they fit into the broader Spawn ecosystem?
Well, the emergence of new malware families is always concerning. It suggests that the attackers are investing resources into developing new tools and techniques. This could be to evade detection by existing security solutions or to achieve specific goals within a compromised environment. In this case, the fact that these new families are being deployed alongside the established Spawn ecosystem suggests a sophisticated and well-resourced adversary.
The Spawn ecosystem is something we've talked about before. Just as a quick reminder, it's a collection of malware components that have been linked to this threat actor in previous campaigns. It's modular and flexible, allowing the attackers to adapt their tactics depending on the target environment.
Exactly. And the fact that they're now incorporating these new malware families into that ecosystem indicates that they're continuing to develop their capabilities. This is not a static threat. It's constantly evolving.
So walk us through the attack chain here. How are attackers actually exploiting this vulnerability and deploying their malware?
Sure. So the first step, as we've discussed, is exploiting CVE 2025-22457 to trigger the buffer overflow. Once they have control of the system, they drop a shell script specifically designed to identify vulnerable processes, in this case, home bin web processes. They're targeting those processes because they're likely to be persistent and provide a good platform for their next stage payload.
And that next stage payload is TRAILBLAZE.
Correct. TRAILBLAZE is injected directly into memory after being base 64 encoded. Injecting into memory rather than writing to disk makes it harder to detect using traditional security tools. The base64 encoding is a simple obfuscation technique that's not particularly sophisticated, but it adds an extra layer of complexity for defenders.
So Trailblaze is kind of like a dropper, right? Its primary function is to deliver the next stage payload, which is BRUSHFIRE.
Yes, exactly. And the way they're deploying BrushFire is quite interesting. They're injecting it into a listening web process. This suggests that they're trying to blend in with legitimate network activity. It's a stealth tactic that makes it harder to distinguish malicious traffic from normal web traffic.
Then comes the use of SSL hooks. This is a technique we've seen before, and it's particularly concerning because it allows the attackers to intercept and manipulate encrypted traffic.
Right. By hooking into the SSL process, they can essentially see everything that's being sent and received, even if it's encrypted. They can use this to steal data, inject their own commands, or even execute additional malware. It's a very powerful technique.
And it's not just about stealing data or controlling the compromised system. The attackers are also taking steps to cover their tracks. We see evidence of log tampering using Spawn Sloth, which is another component of the Spawn ecosystem.
Yeah, SpawnSloth is designed to specifically manipulate or delete log entries that might reveal their presence. It's a classic tactic that helps them to avoid detection and maintain their foothold within the network. And in addition to log tampering, they're also using SpawnSnare and SpawnWave to hide encrypted system components. Again, this is all about stealth and persistence.
So we've got a sophisticated attack chain here. They're exploiting a zero-day vulnerability, deploying new malware, using advanced techniques to hide their activity, and leveraging an established malware ecosystem to maintain persistence. And it's all being attributed to a group known as UNC5221.
Right. UNC5221 is a suspected China Nexus espionage actor that has been active for several years now. They have a history of targeting edge devices, particularly VPN appliances. And they're known to use zero-day exploits, so their involvement in this campaign isn't surprising.
It's all very concerning, especially given the broader trend of state-sponsored actors targeting critical infrastructure. It's clear that these actors have the resources and the motivation to conduct these kinds of sophisticated attacks.
And they're not going to stop anytime soon.
Hmm.
We need to be prepared to defend against these threats.
Absolutely. So for all the security professionals out there listening, what can they do to mitigate the risk from this vulnerability and this malware?
Well, the first and most important step is to patch any affected systems immediately. Ivanti has released updates for Connect Secure, Policy Secure, and ZTA gateways. Those patches need to be applied as soon as possible.
But for those still running Pulse Connect Secure 9.1x, patching isn't an option.
Right, because 9.1x has reached its end of life. There's no security support for that version anymore. The only real solution for those users is to migrate to a supported product.
So even if organizations aren't currently impacted, it's a good time to review their inventory, identify any end-of-life systems, and plan for their replacement.
Absolutely. Relying on unsupported software is a huge security risk, especially for critical infrastructure like VPN appliances.
Okay, so patching is obviously crucial, but is there anything else organizations should be doing?
Well, Ivanti has also released a tool called the Integrity Checker Tool, or ICT. This tool can help organizations to determine if their systems have been compromised. If the ICT flags any suspicious activity, Ivanti recommends a full factory reset of the device, followed by redeployment with the latest patched version.
That's a pretty drastic step.
It is, but it underscores the severity of this vulnerability and the potential for persistent compromise. In some cases, simply patching might not be enough. The attackers might have already established backdoors or installed additional malware that the patch won't remove.
So it's better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. And beyond the immediate response, organizations need to think about their overall security posture. How are they detecting and responding to these types of threats? Do they have the necessary tools and processes in place?
It's a good time to revisit incident response plans, review security policies, and make sure that security teams have the training and resources they need to deal with these sophisticated attacks.
Right, and it's not just about technology, it's also about awareness. Security teams need to be aware of the latest threats and vulnerabilities, and they need to understand how attackers are operating.
Keeping up with threat intelligence is more important now than ever.
Absolutely. And that intelligence needs to be translated into actionable steps. Organizations need to proactively hunt for threats, not just wait for alerts to come in.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the vulnerability, the malware, the attack chain, the threat actor, and the mitigation strategies. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think this whole situation really highlights the importance of securing edge devices. They're often the first point of entry for attackers, and they can be incredibly valuable targets. Organizations need to treat them with the same level of security rigor as they would any other critical system.
Absolutely. We can't afford to overlook those edge devices. They're a crucial part of our attack surface. And with sophisticated attackers like UNC 52221 actively targeting them, we need to be prepared.
We do. And I think this also serves as a reminder that patching alone isn't enough. We need a layered approach to security that includes detection, response, and proactive threat hunting.
It's a continuous process. We can't just set it and forget it.
Exactly. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, and we need to evolve with it.
Well said. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you all for listening. Stay vigilant out there.
Stay safe, everyone.